Chapter 264. After a long time, Zmo sighed faintly, turned around, and left. Yang Kai slowly opened his eyes and stared in the direction she disappeared, a faint smile appearing on his face. "Young master, that little girl seemed to have thought about killing you, but after hesitating for some reason, she finally gave up." The old demon quickly reminded him he had been vigilant of Zmo's movements and had naturally seen her expression just now. "I know she made a wise choice." Yang Kai nodded slightly and continued to close his eyes and meditate. Half a day later, Zmo returned, bringing back a lot of dead wood and a game. Lighting a bonfire and roasting the game, Zmo sat down beside it to warm herself while waiting for Yang Kai to wake up. 3 days later, just as Zmo was cursing Yang Kai, a faint sword intent suddenly came from nearby. Zmo's pretty face immediately changed color as she stood up vigilantly and looked in the direction of the source of this sword intent. Immediately, a look of surprise appeared on her face. Because this sword intent was actually coming from the pit where Yang Kai was healing. This sword intent was very familiar. It was the same sword intent that had appeared a few days ago when Wu Chengyi had displayed his heaven-shaking sword technique, but now it was actually reappearing on Yang Kai's body. Zmo stared at it suspiciously, her brow furrowed. Gradually, this sword intent became stronger and stronger. The rate at which it was increasing was quite fast. In just the time it would take to drink a cup of tea, it had reached a point where Zmo's beautiful face paled. It was as if the dead Wu Chengyi had come back to life and was about to display that amazing sword technique again. Hong. The pit where Yang Kai had been hiding suddenly burst open, filling the air with a cloud of dust as a figure leapt out from inside, leaving behind a trail of red light. Zmo exclaimed and hurriedly retreated, looking towards the source of this figure in amazement, only to see Yang Kai with his eyes closed. In his hand was the crimson-red long sword artifact, standing motionless in place. His yuan qi was undulating, unstoppable, like a sharp sword piercing his body. Clang! The crimson sword gave off a crisp sound. Following this sound, Yang Kai's yuan qi seemed to be activated. In an instant, hundreds of sword energies appeared around him. Another few hundred a moment later, the entire world once again turned into a world of swords. Just like what he saw a few days ago. It was a shocking sight. Zmo covered her mouth. He was extremely shocked. That day, Wu Chengyi had said that this move was one of the 9 Star Sword sects' secret techniques, so how could Yang Kai use it? On top of that, the number of sword qi Yang Kai had condensed was much higher than Wu Chengyi's. Wu Chengyi had spent a great deal of his yuan qi on that day and had only managed to condense 2,000 sword qi. However, at this moment, Yang Kai had transformed into over 3,000 streaks of light. 3,000 was Yang Kai's limit. At this moment, his expression became difficult. With a jolt of the sword, the 3,000-plus strands of sword qi fused together in the blink of an eye. There were only about 100 of them left. Wherever the tip of the sword pointed, the sword qi, which contained a tremendous destructive power, shot out in a certain direction. Hong. The ground in that direction was instantly riddled with holes and fragmented. Yang Kai closed his eyes, his expression dignified. 9 Star Sword sects' secret technique, a mysterious grade sword skill. Sure enough, it was extremely powerful. This move was not inferior to the instantaneous eruption of Star Mark. However, at the same time, it consumed a considerable amount of yuan qi. No wonder Wu Chengyi looked exhausted after using this move. However, compared to Star Mark, 10,000 swords returning to one had many advantages. Because this move was composed of 2 parts, one was to use yuan qi to condense sword qi, which could be used to attack, while the other was to fuse these sword qi together and cultivate it to the grand accomplishment stage, converging them into a single sword strike capable of destroying the heavens and earth. Wu Chengyi had not cultivated it to the grand accomplishment stage, and neither had Yang Kai. However, being able to learn this sword skill, Yang Kai was already very satisfied. At least in the future, when he used the Azura sword, he would no longer just be blindly chopping and chopping, he would at least be able to use his own sword skill. The recently formed yuan qi in his body once again fused together and became as sharp as a sword, rapidly flowing through his meridians. Yang Kai's expression became dignified as he remained motionless. Half an hour later, an invisible aura suddenly spread out, causing Yang Kai's body to tremble as he opened his eyes. Yuan Qi Boundary Second Stage. With the help of this mysterious grade martial skill, Yang Kai's strength had risen to another level. Smiling slightly, Yang Kai put away the Azura sword. Hearing the sound of footsteps behind him, Yang Kai turned around and saw Zmo walking towards him with a strange expression on her face. When she was about a dozen meters away, she came to a stop. Although her face was smiling coquettishly, there was a trace of unconcealable vigilance and dread in her eyes. Just now, right in front of her, Yang Kai had miraculously broken through again. How could she not have noticed? This breakthrough was too strange. There was no sign of it happening at all, causing Zmo to feel both envy and admiration. After a long silence, Zmo finally said, "Since you're awake, I'll be going." She did not ask Yang Kai how he had learned Wu Qingyi's sword skill. At this time, the more she knew, the more harmful it would be to her. Zmo was a smart woman, so she naturally knew when to turn a blind eye. "Where are you going?" Yang Kai tilted his head and asked with a smile. Zmo was stunned for a moment before smiling softly and saying in a soft voice, "Where else can I go? Of course I'm going back to Tianlang Dynasty." Saying so, she covered her mouth and blinked her eyes. "What? Could it be I can't go home?" "You don't need to go back," Yang Kai smiled lightly, his tone carrying a hint of irrefutable meaning. "Just follow me from now on." Zmo was stunned for a moment before smiling sweetly. "Why would I follow you? No matter what, I'm still a member of Tianlang Dynasty. If I follow you back to your sect, I'll be treated with contempt everywhere. I won't do it. You should wear more clothes. You'll look no different from a great Han woman. And I need a maid to serve me, so come back with me to serve me tea, warm my bed, and fold my quilt." Yang Kai said seriously. Zmo's expression changed slightly, but she still forced a smile. "Are you serious? What do you think?" Zmo finally couldn't stand it anymore, the smile gradually fading from her face as her eyes filled with endless grievance, frowning as she stamped her foot. "Can't you be reasonable? I was kind enough to stay here for 3 days to take care of you, and now you want me to be your maid after waking up? If I had known earlier, I would have killed you while you were healing." Realizing that she had said too much, Zmo quickly covered her mouth. Nervously observing Yang Kai's reaction, she forced a smile and said, "I was just thinking, I didn't really want to do anything, so don't be angry, haha." Yang Kai laughed loudly. Zmo became more and more uneasy, biting her red lips, her brow furrowed. She couldn't understand what Yang Kai was thinking. "I was just joking with you." Yang Kai smiled. "Why are you so serious?" "Joking?" Zmo's pretty face became colder and colder. Zmo grit her teeth as she asked. Yang Kai nodded. "I won't take you back with me. You have a woman?" Zmo's eyes lit up. Yang Kai grinned sheepishly. Knowing this, Zmo couldn't help but coldly snort, obviously remembering how Yang Kai had acted so presumptuously towards her in that isolated world. Her heart filled with bitterness, but her courage couldn't help growing as she stepped forward. Swaying her hips, she walked directly to Yang Kai's side, sticking close to him. Grabbing one of his arms, Zmo squeezed her towering breasts. "I changed my mind, I want to go back with you." Zmo slightly raised her chin. Looking at Yang Kai provocatively, she said, "I'd like to see what kind of woman she is, to be able to make such a shameless man fall head over heels for her." Yang Kai grinned meaningfully as he stared at her with great interest. "You don't dare?" Zmo smiled contemptuously. "Woman, be careful of playing with fire." Yang Kai's mouth curled into a wicked grin. Zmo's beautiful face went pale, suddenly remembering everything that had happened in that isolated world. She quickly distanced herself from Yang Kai like he was a snake, her heart filled with hatred, her chest heaving up and down. She really didn't have the qualifications to challenge him. Her soul was under his control. If she really provoked him, in this desolate wilderness, "I'm going back, I pray that I never see you again." I pray that your woman throws you away, leaving you alone for the rest of your life." Zmo viciously cursed. Wait. Yang Kai frowned. "What do you want to do?" Zmo's heart skipped a beat. She didn't want to spend another moment with Yang Kai. Just as she was vigilant, she saw Yang Kai take out a few bottles from his trouser pocket, then from two of them he poured out a drop of liquid and casually tossed it to her. Zmo caught it and suspiciously asked, "What are these?" "A drop of brilliant flame liquid and a drop of soul-cleansing dew." Zmo's expression shook as she stared at Yang Kai in amazement, but soon a look of pleasant surprise appeared on her face. She couldn't believe it, so she deliberately opened the bottle and took a whiff. "For me?" After determining that these two bottles were indeed brilliant flame liquid and soul-cleansing dew, Zmo held them in her arms like they were precious treasures, her hands firmly grasping them. Yang Kai nodded. "Consider it a reward for bullying you all this time." Zmo's pretty face blushed slightly as she stared at Yang Kai for a long time before whispering, "Actually, you're not that bad. Tempted? It's not too late to come with me." Yang Kai grinned. "Get lost." Zmo snorted, her expression suddenly becoming extremely dignified. "Don't worry, I will secretly use them, I won't expose you. If you ever come to Tianlang Dynasty in the future, just come to Sanluo Temple to find me, I will entertain you well, hee. Zmo grit her teeth as she spat out the last sentence. "Smelly man, take care of yourself." Zmo chuckled, her body lightly leaping backwards, using her movement skill and soon disappearing from sight. This time, she was finally free from Yang Kai's control. Zmo felt like a huge stone had been lifted from her heart. Although she still had the brand in her mind, Yang Kai was in the Great Han Dynasty while she was in Tianlang Dynasty. What was there to fear? Once she returned to the sect, she would ask her master if he had a way to remove the brand in her mind. Looking in the direction Zmo disappeared, Yang Kai smiled, turned around, and flew off like a meteor. Passing by the place where he had fought with Wu Chengyi a few days ago, Yang Kai noticed that Wu Chengyi's body was nowhere to be found. Instead, there was a newly dug-up mound nearby, which should have been left by Zm. This woman's mind is quite sharp. A day later, Yang Kai arrived at a nearby town, spent some money to hire a carriage, and told the coachman where to go before going into seclusion to consolidate his Yuan Qi and Mirror Realm. Chapter 265. Medicine King's Valley was a special force that had been passed down from the flowing time Great Emperor for thousands of years. The sect was filled with alchemy masters and most of its disciples were outstanding alchemists. Its strength was not necessarily very strong, only slightly stronger than some second-class sects and far below the combat strength of a first-class sect. However, its influence was unmatched by any other force. As long as one was a cultivator in the process of cultivation, they would need to take some pills, and these pills were all made by alchemists. For all the alchemists in the world, Medicine King's Valley was the holy land in their hearts. Any alchemist, when mentioning Medicine King's Valley, would be extremely pious and respectful. Many people even considered joining Medicine King's Valley to study alchemy and see the Pill Sage's legacy as their life's goal. The Pill Sage, the founder of Medicine King's Valley, had died many years ago, but the passage of time still could not erase his sacred status in the hearts of alchemists. It was rumored that the lineage of alchemy was passed down by the Pill Saint in the past. With Medicine King's Valley as the center, the current generation of cultivators was able to take pills when they were injured. Before the Pill Sage passed down his alchemy skills, the world's cultivator only knew how to find herbs and swallow them whole. This was just a legend, but legends were always exaggerated and could not be completely believed. However, there was one thing in this legend that was true. The Pill Saint had indeed existed, and his portrait now stood in the forbidden area of Medicine King's Valley, surviving thousands of years of the flowing time Great Emperor without any trace of weathering. This in itself was a miracle. Although Medicine King's Valley had the word valley in its name, this force was not built in a mountain valley. There were more than a dozen mountains around it, each of which was over 1,000 feet high. These mountains formed a circle, covering an area of several hundred square kilometers. This area of several hundred square kilometers was where Medicine King's Valley was located. In each mountain peak, there were powerful alchemists residing there. Some of them were taking in disciples and spreading their influence. Some were alone, cultivating alone and comprehending alchemy. There were 1 or 2 acres of medicine fields in each mountain, planted with a variety of spirit grasses and herbs that made people drool. The entire Valley of the Medicine Masters contained an endless supply of alchemy materials. At the center of these mountains was a valley-like existence. It was different from the tranquility of the surrounding mountains. This valley had been here for many years. Every day was bustling with activity. The cultivator coming and going was like a school of carps crossing the river in an endless stream. There was no other reason. This small town built in the middle of the valley was the place where Medicine King Valley communicated with the cultivator from the outside world. If a cultivator wanted to refine pills, they would bring sufficient materials. He had come here to look for the disciples of the Valley of the Medicine Masters to refine. The disciples of Medicine King's Valley did not accept gold or silver for their alchemy. They only accepted 1/3 of the finished product. No matter what grade of pill one came to Medicine King's Valley to refine, whether it was a common grade pill or a heaven grade pill, there was nothing to be said if the refinement failed, but if the pill was successfully refined, 3 out of 10 pills would be the alchemist's reward. This kind of method of collection was a bit of a lion opening its mouth and asking for an exorbitant price. Every single heaven grade medicinal pill was worth a lot. If one worked hard to collect the materials, not only would they have to bear the risk of losing everything, even if the refinement was successful, 30% would be taken away by others as a reward. But even so, it could not erase the enthusiasm and determination of a cultivator to come to Medicine King's Valley to refine pills. Because here, the chances of an alchemist failing to refine pills were very small, and after the pill was successfully refined, the quality of the pills was also higher than the ones refined by the alchemists outside. So even with such harsh conditions, the cultivator was still willing to come here to find someone to refine pills for them. It was better than letting the alchemists outside refine pills and accidentally destroying all the materials. The reputation of Medicine King's Valley was well known, and not only did it attract the cultivator of the Great Han Empire. Even people from the surrounding countries often came here to ask the elders of Medicine King's Valley to refine pills for them. The elders generally did not act rashly. If one wanted to ask them to refine pills, they would need at least heaven grade or even profound grade materials, and the remuneration would be higher. Medicine King's Valley had 10 great elders, each of them sitting in the 10 surrounding mountains, each of them possessing unique skills, and their alchemy skills were superb and unpredictable. Most people and even the disciples of Medicine King's Valley rarely saw them. These elders were all in their 60s and spent most of their time in seclusion studying alchemy, and only when some particularly expensive materials appeared would they act to refine pills. In the valley town, there were many shops, but not all of these shops were owned by Medicine King's Valley, and 90% of them were set up here by the various forces in the world. After all, this was the center of all the alchemists in the world, so these forces set up shops here to sell herbs, collect materials, gather intelligence, and so on. Medicine King's Valley itself was also a loner, never making enemies with any of the forces in the world, and never deliberately befriending any of them, so for thousands of years, it had always maintained a transcendent status. In the valley town, fighting was strictly prohibited, so even though there was an endless stream of cultivators coming and going, no one in this city dared to violate this rule. Once someone fought in the city, there was no need for the people of Medicine King's Valley to act, as the others would kill both sides on the spot. But once outside the valley, all kinds of grievances would be ignored by Medicine King's Valley. Therefore, the surrounding thousands of kilometers were 2 completely different worlds. Inside the valley surrounded by mountains, it was lively and peaceful, while outside the valley, for dozens of kilometers, there was fighting and killing everywhere. These people all had disputes in the valley and did not dare to act on the spot, so they came outside to fight to the death. On this day, a carriage came from afar and stopped about 50 kilometers away from Medicine King's Valley. The coachman put away his whip and shouted into the carriage, Little brother, we've arrived at Medicine King's Valley. We've arrived? Yang Kai awoke from his meditation, a look of joy on his face as he lifted the curtain and walked out, looking around in amazement. Where is this place? The surroundings were empty. What kind of Medicine King's Valley was this? This was clearly the wilderness. The coachman smiled and said, "Little brother may not know, but the outside of Medicine King's Valley is full of dangers. Ordinary people like us do not dare to rashly approach. Whenever a guest wants to be sent to Medicine King's Valley, they will send them here and turn back. Any further is the gates of hell." Yang Kai frowned, and the coachman noticed his displeasure and carefully explained the situation around Medicine King's Valley to him. Hearing this, Yang Kai's brow gradually relaxed, knowing that the coachman was telling the truth and not deliberately leaving him here. So he no longer cared. It was only a few kilometers, so he casually took out a silver note and handed it to the coachman. Using his movement skill, he calmly approached the distant mountain. Although he had just heard the coachman talk about the dangers outside Medicine King's Valley, seeing it for himself was far beyond Yang Kai's imagination. Along the way, in less than 30 kilometers, he saw 4 or 5 places where people were fighting to the death. These people all had conflicts in the valley and then came outside to resolve them. Along the way, there were even many corpses on the ground that were still emitting heat. Yang Kai was secretly speechless, but adhering to the principle of not meddling in other people's business, he quietly walked away. After walking for a short distance, he suddenly heard the sound of a chase behind him, and the sound of clothes flapping in the wind. Yang Kai frowned and turned his head to look. He saw a young girl wearing a sky-blue dress running towards him. The young girl was about 16 or 17 years old. Her appearance was quite pretty, but at this moment her big watery eyes were full of panic. She was running with all her might. Behind her, 6 or 7 figures were chasing, their faces full of anger and murderous intent, each of them carrying a sword, looking extremely vicious. "You little wench, stop right there." An angry shout came from the other side. The girl ran even faster. "Quick, don't let her hide in the valley. Once she's inside, we'll never be able to catch her." The people saw that the girl was heading towards Medicine King's Valley and couldn't help paling. Medicine King's Valley strictly prohibited martial arts. If this girl really rushed in, everything would be over. In the blink of an eye, the girl rushed in front of Yang Kai. Seeing Yang Kai vigilantly sizing her up, the girl smiled, revealing her white teeth, then using all her strength, she gasped for breath and shouted, "Cousin, run, what are you waiting for?" Yang Kai's brow furrowed as his expression became cold, but before he could react, the girl rushed past him like a gust of wind, bringing with her a faint fragrance. "Not good, that little wench still has someone to help her. Quick, don't let a single one of them go, kill the men and capture the women." The face of the person who had just shouted changed greatly. The group of people chasing her seemed to have been injected with chicken blood, their speed suddenly increasing. "Damn!" Yang Kai's expression was filled with resentment as he gritted his teeth and cursed, not wasting any time to explain himself to those people, instead turning around and chasing after the girl. Whether it was the girl in a light blue dress or the group of burly men chasing after her, none of them were very strong, the strongest only Yuan Qi 3rd or 4th stage. Yang Kai really didn't put this kind of strength in his eyes, but to get involved in such a troublesome matter for no reason really made Yang Kai burn with anger. Using his self-created movement skill, 3 steps became 2, and in just a few breaths of time, he had caught up with the girl's figure. The girl was stunned, quickly turning her head to look, just in time to see Yang Kai grimacing at her, his smile ferocious and terrifying. "Cousin." Yang Kai gritted his teeth and called out affectionately. "Ah." The girl's pretty face immediately turned bitter, goosebumps rising all over her body. She never expected that Yang Kai, who looked so young, would be so fast. Before her laughter fell, Yang Kai's face sank, and while running, he stretched out a large hand to grab the girl. The girl's expression changed greatly, and she raised a slender hand to meet his attack. Yang Kai urged his Yuan Qi to meet her attack. The girl's figure flickered, and her speed suddenly decreased a lot. Before she could react, Yang Kai grabbed her waist with one hand and clasped her wrist with the other, suddenly stopping her in her tracks. What are you doing? The young girl shouted in panic as she watched the group of people chasing after her rapidly closing in on her. Yang Kai coldly snorted, twisted his waist, and threw the young girl towards the group of people who had gathered before him. The girl's eyes were filled with disbelief. She never expected that Yang Kai would do such a thing. Chapter 266. Being caught in a hurry and then thrown back, the girl didn't even have time to react and fell straight to the ground. When the group of people who were chasing after her saw this scene, their expressions were greatly shaken, and they scattered in all directions. By the time the young girl landed on the ground, everyone had already surrounded her. "Little wench, let's see where you can run now." The leader of the large men clenched his teeth and shouted, his face full of anger. The rest of the people sneered, and several of them looked up and down the girl's delicate and plump body, their eyes flashing with a trace of lust. Yang Kai observed the expressions of this group of people, and his face suddenly became gloomy. This group of people, they were not good people. The girl looked resentful and bit her red lips, looking at the large men around her with great fear, not daring to move. Her strength was not very strong, only at the peak of separation and reunion boundary. Now that she was surrounded, how could she escape? Her pair of big watery eyes looked towards Yang Kai and screamed, "You bastard, you shameless bastard, I curse you to die a horrible death, to have your soul destroyed, to be struck by lightning." If she had not been thrown back by Yang Kai, she would have already rushed into Medicine King's Valley and been safe. Thinking of this, the girl felt wronged and angry. Yang Kai snorted and turned to leave. Although he knew that this group of large men were not good people, the girl's actions just now had angered him, and he made up his mind to scare her. Seeing him so heartless, the girl felt cold all over. Seeing that Yang Kai was about to leave, the large men surrounding the girl exchanged glances, and two of them quietly rushed out, holding sharp swords and steel knives as they moved towards Yang Kai. Regardless of whether these two people were cousins or not, since he had already seen them, there was no reason to leave them alive. The girl was about to open her mouth to warn him when a sharp sword was placed against her neck. Feeling the cold sensation, the girl immediately swallowed her warning. The two large men were both at the peak of separation and reunion boundary, similar to the girl's realm, and were as fast as the wind. Soon, they arrived behind Yang Kai. The weapons in their hands glowed with a cold light as they aimed straight for Yang Kai's vital points. The young girl couldn't help but cry out in alarm. Her large eyes narrowed, and her long eyelashes trembled incessantly. At this moment, she couldn't help but feel some regret. She really shouldn't have dragged this man, whom she had never met, into the water. Just now, she was being chased too quickly. A thought flashed through her mind. That was all he did. She didn't want to implicate him and cause him to suffer such a calamity. Yang Kai, who was walking forward, seemed to have eyes on his back. Before the weapon could reach him, his body suddenly floated forward. Miraculously, he dodged their attacks. Turning around, Yang Kai looked at the two indifferently, the corners of his mouth slowly rising. He laughed eerily. This turn of events shocked the two large men, causing them to break out in a cold sweat. Knowing that this young man was not weak, they shouted and activated their Yuan Qi, using their killing moves to attack Yang Kai. Two fist shadows appeared in midair, and before the two large men had time to react, their bodies were sent flying backwards by a powerful impact. In midair, they both coughed up blood, and when they fell to the ground, they had already died. Jie 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 jie? The old demon laughed strangely. In that isolated world, he didn't play much of a role, but now that he had finally come out, he naturally had to show his skills. The black gas broke through the air, circled around the bodies of the two dead people, and then flew out. The leader of the large men saw his two subordinates instantly die, and his expression changed greatly. Placing his sword on the girl's neck, he coldly shouted, "Go!" The rest of the people couldn't help but gulp, roaring in unison as they fiercely rushed towards Yang Kai. Jie jie. The old demon attacked again, and all of them were shocked by this strange artifact. Immediately, one of them split up to block the old demon's soul-breaker all, while the others attacked Yang Kai without slowing down. Asterisk pung pung pung. Three muffled sounds rang out. The large men who had just rushed to Yang Kai's side were all involuntarily sent flying, each of their chests caving in. Since entering this isolated world a year ago, Yang Kai's opponents had all been the elite disciples of various forces. Each of these elite disciples had the ability to fight above their own realm, and each of them was capable of killing enemies 2 or 3 minor realms above their own realm. However, these elites had still suffered defeat at the hands of Yang Kai. Even the most tyrannical of them all, Wu Chengyi, could not escape death. How could these small fries be Yang Kai's opponent? With one strike from each of them, none of them had the chance to resist. Those with lower strength were directly killed, while those who were slightly stronger fell to the ground, completely losing their ability to fight. As soon as the bodies of the three fell to the ground, the old demon shamelessly abandoned his opponent and directly went to absorb their souls. The old demon's opponent didn't even have time to escape before Yang Kai grabbed him, gripped his head with both hands, and fiercely twisted it. With a crisp crack, the man's neck directly broke and his body fell limply to the ground. Leaving this man's body behind, Yang Kai coldly walked towards the big man who had kidnapped the girl, step by step, his yuan qi flowing out from his body, his clothes fluttering in the wind, giving him the appearance of a majestic killing god. The girl's mouth formed a circle as she stared at Yang Kai in amazement. She had not expected this boy she had dragged into this water to be so tyrannical. He didn't look much older than her, so how could he be so strong? There was already a deep layer of fear and shock in her flickering large eyes. Compared to this group of enemies who had chased her for several days, Yang Kai was more like a villain, a blood-soaked executioner. He killed people as easily as he pinched an ant to death. From beginning to end, his cold expression had not changed in the slightest, and his eyes had not even blinked once. Human life was as light as a feather to him, so he did not care about it at all. The girl trembled with fear, but how could the big man who had kidnapped her not be the same? Although he had the strength of a Yuan Qi 4th stage master, at this moment he was also scared out of his wits and his soul. He was very clear about the strength of his subordinates. In a one-on-one fight, he could also deal with them, but it was impossible for him to do it as easily as this boy. Friend, this is all a misunderstanding. The big man's forehead was covered in cold sweat as he fearfully watched Yang Kai approach step by step. With a smile on his face, he said, "We didn't do anything to you. Friend, how about we just let it go?" Yang Kai's expression was indifferent, and he did not say a word. Indeed, we were the ones who had eyes but failed to see and were in the wrong first, but you have already killed so many of us, do you still want to kill all of us? The big man repeatedly retreated, and from beginning to end, his long sword was still pressed against the girl's neck. Seeing that Yang Kai was still unmoved, the big man knew that today was not the day to be kind, so he hardened his heart and his expression became ferocious. He gritted his teeth and growled, "Don't come any closer or I'll kill her." "You kill me! You kill me, you also die." Yang Kai was still slowly approaching the big man. In an instant, the big man was sweating profusely. As the boy in front of him approached, he felt like a mountain was pressing down on him, making it difficult for him to breathe. His yuan qi involuntarily circulated, and the long sword in his hand slightly tightened. The girl couldn't help but cry out in alarm as she felt a cold sensation on her neck, and a trace of warmth gushed out from there. "You really think I don't dare to kill you?" The big man tried to intimidate. Before his voice fell, Yang Kai's eyes narrowed, and an invisible force was released from his mind, directly rushing into the big man's soul. This was the power of divine sense. Divine sense not only could be used to perceive the surrounding situation, it could also be used to attack. However, Yang Kai had never had such an experience, so he was just taking a risk. Pouring his divine sense into the big man's body, the big man's expression was stunned for a moment, but when he recovered, he saw that the boy in front of him was already in front of him, stretching out a large hand and grabbing his long sword. The big man roared, and his yuan qi was activated, fiercely cutting towards the girl's neck, wanting to destroy both jade and stone. Yang Kai's eyes were quick, and his palm struck the big man's face, at the same time sweeping his foot towards the girl, sweeping her away from the sword. In a flash, the girl dodged to the side, a few strands of severed hair fluttering in the air. The big man hurriedly retreated, avoiding Yang Kai's palm, and dragging the long sword in his hand, he pulled a long wound on Yang Kai's other hand. Blood splashed, but Yang Kai's expression was cold and calm, and taking advantage of the situation, he clenched his bloody fist and punched the big man's chest. Burning Sun's three-layer blast. The big man's strength was at the fourth stage of the Yuan Qi boundary, so he was caught off guard by Yang Kai's attack, but he was still able to fight back, and his long sword danced in the air, one after another, killing move after another. While they were fighting, the Burning Sun's three-layer blast, Yuan Qi exploded in his body, and the big man groaned 3 times, his face suddenly turning pale. Only at this moment did the old demon have the opportunity to rush forward and join forces with Yang Kai to fight. After a dozen moves, the big man's chest was pierced by Yang Kai's finger. His eyes gradually lost their light, and the big man's face was full of bitterness as he muttered, "Madman!" The old demon laughed strangely, and wrapped the soul breaker rushed into the big man's body, and took away the big man's soul, and immediately turned into black gas and entered Yang Kai's body. "Young master, did you feel it?" the old demon asked softly. Yang Kai shook the blood off his hand. These people's Yuan Qi is very violent, and it seems that they are people who practice evil arts, or they are cultivators who have fallen into the evil path. When a cultivator is at the separation and reunion boundary, their temperament will be divided into 2 levels, which is why this boundary is called the separation and reunion boundary. They enjoy the pleasure of increasing their strength, but are unable to suppress their outbursts of emotions, and are controlled by all kinds of emotions. This is the so-called evil cultivator. These people are generally more brutal, bloodthirsty, and violent. Many cultivators are like this. The higher their strength, the more outstanding their performance will be, and eventually they will walk a different cultivation path from others, such as the people Yang Kai had just killed. Compared to the normal cultivation method, which one is better, no one can say clearly, but generally speaking, evil cultivators are not very popular. In this world, the largest gathering place of evil cultivators is the ash-gray cloud evil land. Within a radius of a few thousand kilometers, big and small demons gathered, and evil cultivators were everywhere. When High Heaven Pavilion's Great Elder Wei Shitong gave Yang Kai a promotion order, it was to go to the ash-gray cloud evil land and kill an evil cultivator whose strength was not lower than his own, but Yang Kai refused. But how did this girl provoke these people? Chapter 267. With suspicion in his heart, Yang Kai turned to look at the young girl. The young girl had been swept away by Yang Kai's foot and had yet to stand up. Her face was filled with panic and fear, as if she had been greatly frightened, her tender body trembling. Just now, just a little bit more and she would have died. That sharp sword even cut off a lot of her hair, and there was even a dark red mark on her neck. At this moment, she was covering her white neck with her hand, and her entire body was dripping with sweat. Seeing Yang Kai looking at her, the young girl couldn't help feeling her heart skip a beat, her face filled with fear. Only now did she realize what kind of existence she had provoked. 7 or 8 lives had been taken by him in less than 30 breaths of time. It was not an exaggeration to say that he was a murderous man. Yang Kai frowned, stepped forward, and squatted down in front of her. The young girl retreated again and again, her long eyelashes trembling, her fear reaching the extreme. Chuckling, Yang Kai pushed her hand away and looked at the scar on her neck, saying, "It's just a superficial wound, if you heal it well, it won't even leave a scar." Saying so, he reached into his sleeve and took out a healing pill and handed it to her. The young girl squeezed out a smile. "I have a pill." Her vigilance was quite strong, so Yang Kai didn't care and put away his own pill. The young girl looked at him timidly, but seeing that he didn't seem to have any malicious intent, she bravely took out a bottle and swallowed a pill. "When you were caught, didn't you know to lean back a little?" Yang Kai frowned. "I've never fought with anyone before." The young girl's face was a little red. Since she was young, although she had always been cultivating at most, she had only sparred with others as friends. She had never experienced that kind of life and death battle. Being held by a long sword, She was instantly at a loss of what to do and didn't know what to do. Yang Kai carefully looked at her and found that this young girl's skin was delicate and her clothes were quite luxurious. Although she looked a little mischievous, she still had a unique temperament, one that could not be cultivated by an ordinary small force. This was definitely a young lady from a large family. It was no wonder that despite looking to be around the same age as him, he had the strength of a peak separation and reunion boundary cultivator. Moreover, his actual combat experience was so poor. It was the result of being spoiled. How did you provoke this group of people? How would I know? The girl immediately felt wronged. When I left home, when I was playing outside, this group of people suddenly appeared. He had been captured by them long ago. All of them were so ugly. You scared me to death. Yang Kai couldn't help but smile. Seeing that he seemed to be easy to talk to, the young girl's courage couldn't help but grow a lot, and her almond eyes widened. He gritted his teeth and looked at Yang Kai. And you, why did you throw him back? Do you know how dangerous it was? If I really die, I won't let you go even if I become a ghost. I'll follow you every day and annoy you to death. Yang Kai stared into the distance with a deep look in his eyes. After a while, he retracted his gaze and said in a deep voice, "Maybe you didn't mean to shout like that, but what if it was someone else with no strength? If you're unlucky, you'll probably be immediately dismembered by the chaotic swords." The young girl was stunned. Her eyes flickered as she lowered her head and said softly, "I was wrong." After saying that, she looked up again. She felt wronged. "But aren't you too cruel? People say that one should help when they see injustice. You're so strong, even if I used you, it wouldn't matter." Yang Kai chuckled and didn't explain. When those big men surrounded the young girl, Yang Kai naturally saw the lewd light in their eyes. He planned to wait for them to leave and then secretly follow them to see the situation. But he didn't expect that those people wouldn't even let him go. It just so happened that he wanted to kill them all. Standing up, ignoring the young girl's shouts and questions, Yang Kai used his movement skill and headed straight for Medicine King's Valley. The young girl was stunned. She also hurriedly stood up and followed. This place was only a few miles away from Medicine King's Valley. She was deeply afraid that a few evil people would suddenly jump out from somewhere, so naturally she couldn't wait to hide in Medicine King's Valley. Chasing after Yang Kai's figure, after entering the valley town, she couldn't find him anymore. "He's not much older than me, but his strength is so strong. Which family is he from?" The young girl whispered to herself, thinking for a long time but still unable to think of a suitable person. She couldn't help feeling annoyed. Entering the valley town, a variety of medicinal fragrances filled the air, making one feel refreshed. Yang Kai casually wandered around the town and found that the shops here, with the exception of the inns and restaurants, were all related to herbs and pills. Ordinary and extraordinary spirit grasses, rare fruits, miraculous medicines, everything was here. A variety of herbs were displayed in the shops, and there were many that Yang Kai had never even heard of before, but they could be seen everywhere. Worthy of Medicine King's Valley, Yang Kai praised in his heart. With such a scene, as long as one was an alchemist, they wouldn't be willing to leave here. Alchemists had a special fondness for herbs, so with so many of them here, it would be strange if they were willing to leave. In every shop, there were many cultivators who had come here to look around or haggle with the shop owner to buy herbs. There were also many alchemists who were helping the cultivator refine pills. However, all the alchemists in Medicine King's Valley town were disciples of Medicine King's Valley. Most of the cultivators who came here to ask for help in alchemy were here because of Medicine King's Valley's reputation, so naturally they wouldn't look for alchemists from other forces. Yang Kai strolled around for a long time, admiring and observing the alchemists as he went. He found that these alchemists were also divided into different grades. Their corresponding grades were ordinary grade, earth grade, heaven grade, and mysterious grade, each of which was divided into 3 grades: high, medium, and low. Most of the alchemists Yang Kai saw were earth-grade alchemists. For example, the one in front of him who had a silver 2-petal flower embroidered on his chest was an earth-grade mid-rank alchemist, which also meant that he could skillfully refine earth-grade mid-rank pills. Each petal corresponded to a grade: gold, silver, and white, which corresponded to high, medium, and low. Through the embroidery on these alchemists' clothes, Yang Kai could see what level they were at. There were very few heaven-grade alchemists, and as for mysterious-grade alchemists, there was not a single one. Only the elders of Medicine King's Valley were mysterious-grade alchemists. Many shops had finished pills for sale. Yang Kai wasn't interested in ordinary pills, but pills that could nourish his soul were something he couldn't help but linger on. These pills could not only strengthen his newly cultivated divine sense, but also nourish the soul-warming lotus, allowing the 5-colored soul-warming lotus to advance towards its ultimate goal of becoming a 7-colored lotus. Once the soul-warming lotus evolved to a 7-colored lotus, its effect would be great. However, soul-nourishing pills were very rare, and many times more expensive than ordinary pills. A bottle of ordinary earth-grade low-rank pills, 10 pills in a bottle, sold for 5,000 taels. But a bottle of earth-grade low-rank soul-nourishing pills was at least 30,000 taels. That was 6 times more expensive. Kai Yang was embarrassed, so he could only look at the ocean and sigh. After strolling around for a long time, Yang Kai saw that the sky was getting dark, so he found an inn to stay for the night. At night, the town of Medicine King's Valley was even more lively, so Yang Kai casually ate a meal before leaving the inn to inquire about some news. He had come to Medicine King's Valley this time to take a look at the Myriad Drug Pond, but the Myriad Drug Pond was a forbidden area of Medicine King's Valley, so it would not be easy to enter. For the next few days, Yang Kai had been inquiring about Medicine King's Valley, but he had been unable to find a way, so he was secretly anxious. Medicine King's Valley's Myriad Drug Pond was located on top of the Pill Saint's Peak. Not only was there a Myriad Drug Pond, but there was also a portrait of the Pill Saint. It was a holy land in the hearts of all alchemists and was usually heavily guarded. Even ordinary Medicine King's Valley disciples could not even think of approaching. Only the Valley Master and Elders were qualified to comprehend the mysteries of alchemy left behind by the Pill Saint. Yang Kai had heard many rumors about the Pill Saint's statue, many of which were said to be miraculous. It was said that the Pill Saint's ancestral spirit would appear from time to time, solving the puzzles in the hearts of alchemists and even teaching them alchemy techniques, allowing many people to benefit greatly. It was because of this that Medicine King's Valley carefully protected the Myriad Drug Pond. With such a heavily guarded place, how could one approach it? The Myriad Drug Pond was different from High Heaven Pavilion's Coiling Dragon Stream. Although the Coiling Dragon Stream was a forbidden area, it was very long and very dangerous, so naturally no one dared to approach it. On this day, Yang Kai was wandering around the town when he suddenly saw a familiar figure flash by. Looking at this person's back, Yang Kai couldn't help chuckling. He quietly followed the man. After a short while, he saw the man enter a shop. Yang Kai looked up and saw a plaque hanging above the shop that read, Dong Medicine Store. As soon as Yang Kai walked into the medicine hall, a waiter immediately came out and greeted him enthusiastically. "What is honored guest looking for? Our Dong Family Medicine Hall is rich in herbs and has everything you need. Whether it is alchemy materials or finished pills, we sell them all at fair prices. If honored guest is interested, please take a look around." "I don't want to buy anything." Yang Kai shook his head. "Then, I'm looking for the young man who just went in," Yang Kai said. The waiter's expression immediately became vigilant. Sweeping his eyes over Yang Kai, he didn't become angry and instead tentatively asked, "May I ask what this little brother's name is?" Yang Kai smiled faintly. "Just tell him that an old friend of High Heaven Pavilion has come to visit." The waiter stared blankly for a moment before nodding slightly. Turning around, the waiter went into the inner hall to report, and a moment later, came back out again, his face full of smiles as he said flatteringly, "Little brother, please follow me, my young lord invites you in." Yang Kai nodded. Entering the inner hall, the waiter followed the stairs all the way up to the 3rd floor. When he reached the door, the waiter respectfully said, "The young lord is inside." Saying so, the waiter respectfully withdrew. Yang Kai pushed open the door and strode in. At a glance, Yang Kai saw a slightly fat face looking towards him with a smile. Dong family, Dong Qinghan. Behind him were the Dong family's wind and cloud dual guards. These two old men didn't say a word, and although they seemed to be very old, in fact their eyes were quite reserved, only nodding slightly towards Yang Kai. Next to him sat a dignified and pretty young girl who was angrily holding a cup of tea. Yang Kai's eyes swept over this group of people, and when their four eyes met, he was stunned. The young girl also stared at Yang Kai in amazement, her expression extremely strange, her pair of eyes staring stupidly at him, the tea she had just taken a sip of involuntarily spurting out all over Dong Qinghan's face. Chapter 268. What the hell are you doing? Dong Qinghan had been putting on an older cousin smile as he looked at Yang Kai, but after being scolded by the young girl, his image was immediately ruined. It's him. The young girl pointed at Yang Kai with her delicate finger, her face filled with shock. Dong Qinghan finally managed to sweep the tea leaves off his head and frowned. What do you mean it's him? Speak clearly. The man I met outside the mountain valley, the bad guy who grabbed me and threw me out. The young girl quickly explained. Dong Qinghan was stunned, turning his head to look at Yang Kai, then back at the young girl, a trace of astonishment flashing across his fat face. What a coincidence! Yang Kai was also puzzled. He hadn't expected this mischievous girl to appear here. This was the Dong family's territory, and she was able to sit at the same table as Dong Qinghan. Her status was definitely not low. Could it be? His brow furrowed, Yang Kai faintly guessed. You still dare to appear in front of me? The young girl remembered what had happened that day, but now that she had the support of Dong Qinghan and the Wind and Cloud dual guards, she immediately became spirited, gritting her teeth as she rushed over to Yang Kai, tilting her chin up proudly, seemingly imitating someone else's demeanor as she sneered. Hee, what's this called? There was a path to heaven but you refused to take it. There was no door to hell but you still rushed in. You're dead. Although she said this, there was no trace of anger or murderous intent on her face. Instead she stared at Yang Kai with great interest. Yang Kai grinned. Is this how you treat your savior? Saying so, he slapped the young girl's head. The young girl's big eyes narrowed. Her body suddenly shrank, and she quickly ran back like a rabbit, hiding behind Dong Qinghan, gnashing her teeth as she glared at Yang Kai, her face full of arrogance. Don't be presumptuous. Dong Qinghan scolded with a straight face. The young girl immediately straightened her back and shouted at Yang Kai, Don't be presumptuous. I said you. Dong Qinghan turned back and glared at her. The young girl suddenly froze. No matter what, he did save your life. Don't you know how to thank me? You're already so old, yet you don't even have the slightest bit of etiquette. Dong Qinghan reprimanded sternly. I don't want that. If he hadn't thrown me back that day, I would have been able to escape into Medicine King's Valley. The girl stomped her foot and made a face at Dong Qinghan. Impudent. Get out. Dong Qinghan angrily slammed the table. The young girl pursed her lips and her eyes immediately turned red. She angrily rushed out. Before he left, he glared fiercely at Yang Kai. After the young girl left, Dong Qinghan smiled wryly and shook his head, signaling to the Wind and Cloud dual guards. The two of them immediately released their divine senses and nodded to Dong Qinghan. Sit down. Dong Qinghan motioned. Yang Kai sat down and poured himself a cup of tea. He frowned and asked, That person just now, you've met before. Yang Kai couldn't help but smile wryly. If that was the case, then did they really have a cousin's relationship? He hadn't expected that what she had just casually called out that day would actually become true. Dong Qingyan, Yang Kai had some impression of her. However, the only time he had ever met her was 10 years ago. At that time, she was still a little girl running around behind Dong Qinghan. 10 years later, how could Yang Kai recognize her? A woman changes 18 times between childhood and womanhood. Yang Kai shook his head. Not only did he not recognize her, she probably didn't recognize him either. Who would remember so many things from their childhood? Yen said that a few days ago she was rescued by a young man about her age. I didn't expect that person to turn out to be you. Dong Qinghan also sighed. Sometimes the world was full of coincidences. It was a chance encounter. Yang Kai nodded slightly, not bothering to claim credit for himself. Not to mention that he hadn't spent much effort that day. The person he had saved was his cousin, so naturally there was nothing worth mentioning. While the two of them were talking, Dong Qingyan came back and tiptoed towards them. In her hand was a piece of ancient jade that exuded a faint energy fluctuation. As these fluctuations spread out, all of her aura was concealed. This kind of shielding was very thorough. Even an immortal ascension boundary master wouldn't be able to detect her with their divine sense. A short time later, Dong Qingyan arrived outside the door like a cat, her small ears perked up as she listened. Yang Kai and Dong Qinghan seemed to be quite familiar with each other, which naturally aroused her curiosity. On top of that, her big brother usually didn't reprimand her, but just now he had actually directly asked her to leave. Dong Qingyan immediately thought that the two of them must have some kind of secret to discuss, so her big brother had deliberately sent her away. This young lady wants to hear what you two are talking about. The sound of their conversation drifted out from inside the house. Dong Qingyan bit her red lips, her small face flushed red with nervousness. Although she was nervous, she was also excited. When she was in the Dong family, she had relied on this ancient jade to eavesdrop on countless secrets, so she was already familiar with this. Why you here? Dong Qinghan looked at Yang Kai and asked. I've come to ask for your help. What kind of help? I want to enter Medicine King's Valley. Yang Kai got straight to the point, taking a sip of his tea and looking at Dong Qinghan faintly. Do you have any idea how to do so? Which peak? Dong Qinghan's expression became serious. Pill Saint's Peak. Hearing this, not only did Dong Qinghan's eyes narrow, even the wind and cloud dual guards standing behind him glanced towards Yang Kai. Dong Qinghan smiled bitterly. Medicine King's Valley has 12 peaks, 10 of which are the residences of the 10 great elders. One is the residence of the Valley Master, and the central peak is the Pill Saint's Peak, which is also Medicine King's Valley's restricted area. If you want to enter one of the other peaks, I have a way, but this Pill Saint's Peak, I really don't have the ability. There's no way at all? Yang Kai didn't want to give up. He also knew that the Pill Saint's Peak was special, otherwise, he wouldn't have come looking for Dong Qinghan. He couldn't use the power of the Yang family right now, but Dong Qinghan was different. He was the young lord of the Dong family, the future successor, so naturally he could use the Dong family's connections. Dong Qinghan frowned, tapping his fingers on the table for a moment before saying, It's not impossible. Yang Kai's eyes lit up. Let's hear it. In 2 months, the Alchemy Summit will be held here. At that time, all the alchemists from all over the world will come here to compete with one another. The top 50 alchemists of each realm's alchemist assembly will be allowed to enter the Pill Saint's Peak to look at the Pill Saint's portrait and comprehend the secrets of alchemy. If you can enter the top 50, you can legitimately enter the Pill Saint's Peak. Yang Kai rolled his eyes. Do I look like an alchemist to you? Dong Qinghan shook his head. You don't, but this is the only way to enter the Pill Saint's Peak. Other than that, unless you become an elder of Medicine King's Valley. Yang Kai smiled bitterly. Both of these methods were fantastical. Becoming an elder of Medicine King's Valley was obviously impossible, and obtaining a top 50 ranking at the Alchemy Summit was also nonsense. Yang Kai had never even touched upon the alchemic way, so how could he stand out among the world's alchemists? Anyone who dared to show off their skills at the Alchemy Summit must have a deep understanding of the alchemic way. Considering all this, Yang Kai couldn't help frowning. Besides the Pill Saint's Peak, if you want to go to any of the other peaks, I can find a way, and it won't be difficult. Dong Qinghan also felt a little embarrassed. This was the first time in his life that his cousin had asked him to do something, yet he couldn't help feeling a little embarrassed. Won't be difficult? Dong Qinghan smiled faintly. It's very simple. Just find some precious treasures and ask the elders of Medicine King's Valley to refine them. That way, you can enter one of the peaks, but at most you can only stay for half a day. If you stay any longer, Medicine King's Valley will expel you. Those elders have very bad tempers, and the disciples of Medicine King's Valley are also very arrogant, even more domineering than the young lords of your central capital's 8 great families. Yang Kai listened to this and secretly shook his head. Only being able to enter for half a day was definitely not enough time. If that's the case, if you're not in a hurry, you can go back first. I'll think of other ways to help you. Dong Qinghan's expression became dignified and serious. I won't ask you what you want to do with the Pill Saint's Peak, but if you make any mistakes, don't sell out my Dong family. Listening to him speak so seriously, Yang Kai grinned. What do you think I'm going to do? Who knows what you want to do, little brat? Dong Qinghan snorted, sighing. I can only say I'll think of a way to help you. I don't have any assurance of success. Yang Kai nodded. After bidding farewell to Dong Qinghan, Yang Kai returned to the inn and sat down to meditate while thinking about how to enter the Pill Saint's Peak. The meaning of Dong Qinghan's words was obvious. He didn't have a good way to send Yang Kai to the Pill Saint's Peak, so he couldn't pin his hopes on him. Just as he was thinking hard, there was a knock on the door. Yang Kai frowned, stood up, and opened the door. Opening his eyes, he saw the mischievous Dong Qingyan smiling at him shyly. He. The hatred and hostility from a moment ago had disappeared, replaced by a sense of cordiality and curiosity. Why you here? Yang Kai looked at her curiously. You really are here? Dong Qingyan breathed a sigh of relief, glancing around the room, lightly coughing. Big brother asked me to tell you that he's found a way. Hearing this, Yang Kai's mouth slowly rose, revealing a strange grin as he stepped aside and said, Come in. Dong Qingyan didn't show any fear and quickly entered the room. Looking around the room with great interest, Dong Qingyan pursed her lips and said, You live in a place like this? So small and messy. Cough. Dong Qingyan knew that the identity of the Yang family's young lord couldn't be spoken casually, so she quickly swallowed her words. Your brother said he has a way? Yang Kai looked at her with a smile. Dong Qingyan nodded quickly. Did he tell you that himself? Of course. Dong Qingyan's long eyelashes trembled slightly. Then why didn't he tell me himself? Wouldn't it be the same if I did? Dong Qingyan sat down on the bed and playfully said, Big brother said that I will be fully responsible for this matter. He has another important matter to attend to and has already left Medicine King's Valley, so there's no need to look for him in the future. Chapter 269. Dong Qingyan spoke as if she was telling the truth, but how could Yang Kai believe her? Really? Yang Kai smiled even more strangely. Why would I lie to you? Dong Qingyan stuck out her chest and patted it with her hands. Don't worry, I promise you that you'll be able to get close to where you want to go. Heh. Yang Kai grinned as he stared at Dong Qingyan. This laughter was both obscene and evil, causing Dong Qingyan to feel a prickly heat rise up on her arm, quietly swallowing her saliva, and timidly saying, You're so scary when you laugh. Yang Kai's expression became serious, no longer trying to beat around the bush with her. Tell me, how do you know all this? What? Dong Qingyan pretended to be confused, her expression somewhat unnatural. You know where I want to go. Yang Kai narrowed his eyes at her, raising a finger and shaking it. Don't tell me it was your brother who told you. Dong Qinghan wouldn't do such a thing. In the Dong family medicine shop, he had sent Dong Qingyan away before talking to Yang Kai, obviously not wanting her to know Yang Kai's identity, so how could he suddenly involve her in this for no reason? Moreover, the two of them had only been separated for less than an hour. An hour ago Dong Qinghan was helpless, so how could he have come up with a solution in such a short time? Coupled with this mischievous little cousin of his, it would be strange if Yang Kai didn't see the problem. It really was my brother who told me. Dong Qingyan firmly asserted. Yang Kai grinned meaningfully, grabbed Dong Qingyan's arm, and dragged her out. What are you doing? What are you doing? Dong Qingyan refused to leave, screaming in horror. Yang Kai frowned. If you keep shouting, I'll knock you out. Dong Qingyan quickly closed her mouth and tried her best to retreat, but her strength was much lower than Yang Kai's, so how could she escape? In the blink of an eye, she was dragged to the door. What the hell do you want to do? Dong Qingyan looked at Yang Kai pitifully, a pleading look upon her face. I'll send you back to Dong Qinghan. I'm sure he hasn't left yet. Don't. I barely managed to escape. If you send me back, I'll be finished. Dong Qingyan panicked. Yang Kai grinned. Then tell me, how do you know all this? Okay, I'll tell you. Only then did Yang Kai release her. Dong Qing Yen glared at Yang Kai bitterly. She rubbed her aching wrist and slowly tidied up her messy clothes. Only then did she angrily sit back on the bed. If you dare to lie, I'll really send you back to your brother, Yang Kai said seriously. I overheard it myself. Dong Qing Yen quietly glanced over at Yang Kai, but seeing his expression sink, she quickly added, I'm not lying to you, I really overheard it myself. Yang Kai smiled. He asked, how did you overhear it? You're just a peak separation and reunion cultivator. How could you hide from the wind and cloud dual guard's divine senses? When he was talking to Dong Qing Han, the wind and cloud dual guards had been monitoring the nearby area. If Dong Qing Yen had really been eavesdropping at that time, she certainly wouldn't have escaped the detection of those two old men. I naturally have my ways, Dong Qing Yen said smugly, sitting on the edge of the bed, her two legs swinging back and forth. Seeing Yang Kai's distrustful expression, Dong Qing Yen couldn't help but frown. I'm the Dong family's young lady, how could I not have at least one or two defensive artifacts? Artifact? Yang Kai's brow rose, a look of surprise on his face. What kind of artifact could hide from the divine senses of an immortal ascension boundary master? On top of that, the wind and cloud dual guards were both late-stage immortal ascension boundary masters, roughly the 7th or 8th stage. To be able to hide from them, the role of this artifact was really not small. Realizing that she had spilled the beans, Dong Qing Yan's face filled with annoyance, hesitantly looking at Yang Kai. Quietly whispering, she said, I'll show it to you, but don't try to steal it from me. Yang Kai didn't know whether to laugh or cry, silently nodding his head. He was also very curious about this so-called artifact. Seeing him agree, Dong Qing Yen solemnly took out a piece of ancient jade from her sleeve. Yang Kai stared at it and saw that this piece of ancient jade had a dark yellow color, as if it was made by nature. However, there were some crisscrossing lines on the surface of this jade, obviously it had been refined by someone. Dong Qing Yen poured her yuan qi into it, causing Yang Kai's brow to wrinkle as he discovered that her aura had disappeared in an instant. Dong Qing Yen said, You haven't reached the immortal ascension boundary yet, so without your divine sense, you won't be able to understand this artifact. You won't be able to understand the wonders of this artifact, but I'm not lying to you. It was because I used this artifact that I was able to hide from those two old men. While she was speaking, Yang Kai had already released his divine sense to investigate her surroundings and found that it was indeed as she had said. As his divine sense swept across the area, there was nothing unusual about her. If he closed his eyes, he wouldn't even notice that there was another person here. This artifact is quite interesting. Put it away. Don't expose this thing in front of strangers in the future. Yang Kai sternly exhorted. Dong Qing Yen giggled. I don't want to show off my wealth, I'm not stupid. Saying so, she put away the ancient jade. How much did you hear? Yang Kai asked with a smile. Almost all of it. Dong Qing Yen stuck out her tongue. Then how much do you know? I know that place you want to go, and I also know, you really are my cousin. Dong Qing Yen was speechless. She had just casually called him that day, but he had been so accurate. You said before that there was a way for me to get close to that place, is that true? Of course it's true. Dong Qing Yen nodded repeatedly, her eyes rolling as she said, but I won't tell you the method now. Yang Kai suddenly smiled. Do you have a condition? If you do, then state it. Don't let my brother catch me. Dong Qing Yen hurriedly said. Yang Kai frowned. He had long noticed that this little girl had secretly run out. Dong Qing Han appearing in Medicine King's Valley was probably because he had chased after her. Although he had some kinship with the Dong family, in the end, this was their family's business. How could he make such a decision? A few days ago, she had been chased by a group of villains. If something really happened to her, how could the Dong family let it go? Cousin. Dong Qing Yen saw him hesitating, so she put on a pitiful look, shaking Yang Kai's arm. I'm bored to death at home. I just came out for a walk. After a few days I'll go back. Please don't tell them anything. Yang Kai remained silent. Dong Qing Yen continued to plead, finally saying fiercely, If you don't protect me, I'll tell everyone you're the Yang family's young lord. Let's see who's going to have a hard time. Yang Kai couldn't help rubbing his forehead, feeling a headache coming on. If it had been someone else threatening him like this, he would have directly silenced them, but this girl in front of him couldn't. After thinking for a while, Yang Kai said, I'll definitely inform Dong Qinghan of your whereabouts. Young Lady Dong suddenly jumped up. She cursed, You have no conscience. Smelly cousin. I hate you. Let me finish. Yang Kai glared at her, but I can also protect you, provided you don't make trouble for me. Dong Qingyan nodded like a chicken pecking at rice. I promise to be obedient. Helplessly shaking his head, Yang Kai could only write a letter. Inside the Dong family medicine shop, Dong Qinghan was furious. Young lady disappeared? How could she disappear? Did you all grow up eating shit? With so many pairs of eyes watching you, in the blink of an eye she disappeared? The several Dong family disciples in front of him were being scolded so badly they couldn't help feeling like crying. There was nothing they could do, they didn't have much strength. Medicine King's Valley was filled with people, and with the young lady's strange behavior, she had disappeared into the crowd. What can we do? Thinking so in their hearts, they didn't dare to say anything. What are you waiting for? You bunch of idiots, hurry up and find her. If you can't find the young lady, then don't come back. Just find a place to chop yourself up and feed yourself to the dogs, useless things. Dong Qinghan's face was livid. The group of people felt as if they had been granted amnesty. Quickly scattering like birds and beasts, all of them muttering in their hearts, Young lady, please come back quickly, if you don't we'll all die. Young master, Medicine King's Valley strictly forbids fighting. The young lady won't be in any danger, don't worry. Maybe she'll come back soon. One of the wind and cloud dual guards comforted. I'm afraid she'll run away. Dong Qinghan said helplessly, this little girl doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. She suffered a big loss a few days ago and now she still hasn't learned her lesson. His face filled with resentment. The two guards glanced at each other and didn't say anything more. Just as he was feeling annoyed, a young servant came in from outside and bowed respectfully. Which one of you is the Dong family's young lord? Dong Qinghan quickly replied, I am. Hello, young Lord Dong. The young servant smiled flatteringly. A guest asked me to deliver a letter to you. Dong Qinghan's expression shook. Where is it? The young servant quickly handed over the letter. Hurriedly opening it and glancing over it, Dong Qinghan finally put down a big stone in his heart. One of the wind and cloud dual guards gave the young servant some silver and sent him away. Seeing his young lord's furrowed brow relax, he couldn't help asking, Have you found the young lady's whereabouts? Dong Qinghan rubbed his forehead and took a deep breath, whispering, she went to Yang Kai's place. Since she's with young Lord Yang, there's no need to worry. Inside the inn, Yang Kai gave Dong Qingyan a room next door. Such a thoughtful arrangement greatly increased the Dong family's young lady's impression of Yang Kai. Cousin, you're so kind. The next day, when Dong Qinghan came to visit, Yang Kai briefly explained the whole story, causing Dong Qinghan to smile wryly. Dong Qingyan's threat made him not dare to use force. If Yang Kai's identity was exposed, it would not be a joke. In desperation, he could only comply with his little sister's temperament. Time flew by, and 7 or 8 days passed in a flash. These days, Yang Kai spent most of his time cultivating. Although there were many cultivators in Medicine King's Valley, the world energy here was still abundant, so it was a good place to cultivate. From time to time, he would be dragged out to play by Dong Qingyan, and after these days of contact, Yang Kai was surprised to find that his cousin was also an alchemist. However, her grade was not high, only a common grade mid-rank alchemist. She was the Dong family's young lady and had never had to worry about food or clothing since childhood. The family had spent a huge amount of manpower and material resources to cultivate her. If she wanted to refine pills, she could directly obtain them from the family. Why would she need to perform alchemy herself? So even though she showed a strong interest in alchemy, she didn't have much practical experience. After arriving in Medicine King's Valley, it was like arriving in heaven. Everything here made her forget to return. Chapter 270. On this day, before dawn, Yang Kai's door was knocked open and Dong Qinyan excitedly rushed in, directly standing in front of Yang Kai. "Ku, what ku?" Yang Kai glared at her and cut her off. Dong Qinyan stuck out her tongue and quickly corrected herself, calmly saying, "Guard Yang, come with this young lady." After all, she was the Dong family's young lady, and the Dong family and Yang family were related by marriage. If someone were to hear Dong Qinyan call out to Yang Kai, they would definitely be able to guess Yang Kai's identity. So, after some discussion, the two decided that Yang Kai would play the role of Dong Qinyan's guard. When a young lord or young lady of a great family went out, they would always have a few servants around them, so it was reasonable to call them this. Looking at the sky outside, Yang Kai faintly said, "Go play by yourself, I won't accompany you today." Dong Qinyan didn't become annoyed, instead just giggling. "Guard Yang, don't you want to go to that place?" Yang Kai's expression suddenly became serious. "Is today the right time?" For the past few days, Yang Kai had been asking her if she had a way to get close to the Pill Saint's Peak, but Dong Qinyan had never given him any details, only saying that the time wasn't right yet. Bringing it up today naturally gave Yang Kai a glimmer of hope. "Then do you want to go out with this young lady?" Dong Qinyan looked at him triumphantly. Yang Kai quickly got out of bed. Inside the Medicine King's Valley town, Dong Qinyan shuttled through the crowd, as agile as a fish swimming through water. Yang Kai was wearing a set of martial arts robes, his hands folded behind his back, a serious expression on his face as he followed closely behind her. At a glance, it was obvious he was Dong Qinyan's attendant. Arriving at the eastern end of the town, Dong Qinyan's face immediately flushed with excitement and nervousness. Yang Kai could even clearly hear her heartbeat. She took a deep breath and covered her chest with her hand, calming herself down after a long time. Yang Kai looked around and found that there were many people gathered here. Moreover, each of these people had a unique flower petal embroidered on their chests. There were 2 pieces, gold, silver, and white. These people were all alchemists. Most of them were Earth-grade low-rank alchemists, but there were also many common-grade alchemists. There were at least 200 people gathered here, bustling with activity. Dong Qinyan also pulled out a single silver petal ornament from somewhere. He pinned it on his chest. Puffing up her chest, it was as if she wanted to let the whole world know that she was a common-grade mid-rank alchemist. "What the hell are you doing?" Yang Kai faintly felt that something was wrong. He asked softly, "Wait, whether you can enter or not will depend on this." Dong Qinyan responded softly, her small face filled with seriousness. Yang Kai frowned. Closing his eyes, Yang Kai slowly released his divine sense and listened to the nearby alchemist's whispers. After a while, his expression became strange. These people had come from all over the world, but they had all gathered here in order to become a disciple of Medicine King's Valley's Hidden Cloud Peak's elder Xiao Fu Sheng and learn alchemy. Yang Kai opened his eyes, looked at Dong Qinyan, and asked, "Did you come here to become a disciple?" Dong Qinyan smiled. "Of course, Grandmaster Xiao is accepting a disciple. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. I ran away from home just for today." Saying so, she looked at Yang Kai pitifully. "Guard Yang, you don't want to tell my big brother, do you? I just want to know what this has to do with my goal. Hidden Cloud Peak is not far from there. If you can enter." Dong Qinyan said meaningfully. Yang Kai listened to her and his heart moved. Indeed, if he could enter Hidden Cloud Peak, he might be able to find an opportunity to enter the Pill Saint's Peak. The 2 peaks were only separated by 2 mountains. "But I don't understand alchemy." Dong Qinyan chuckled. "Grandmaster Xiao is accepting a disciple, so there must be a secret behind it. Even if you don't understand alchemy, you still have a chance. It just depends on whether you have the aptitude." "Guard Yang." Dong Qinyan gently shook Yang Kai's arm. "You see, I've done so much for you, so please don't tell my big brother about this, okay? Besides, being able to become Grandmaster Zhao's disciple can be considered as winning glory for my family. Even if my father finds out later, he will only praise me, so please don't do something so thankless." Yang Kai faintly said, "If you can go in, then we'll talk." "I'm sure I can." Dong Qinyan said confidently, For this day, I've made a lot of preparations. Just wait and see, I don't know if you can go in. Yang Kai secretly shook his head. He really hadn't expected Dong Qingyan's method to actually be this. The method was very good, but Yang Kai didn't have any confidence. He had never touched alchemy before, so how could he pass Grandmaster Zhao's test? However, right now he could only bite the bullet and try. In any case, he wouldn't lose anything. As time passed, more and more alchemists gathered here, each of them full of enthusiasm. Like Dong Qingyan, there was a mixture of nervousness and anticipation, many of these alchemists even showing pious expressions. It was obvious how much these people respected and worshipped Hidden Cloud Peak's Xiao Fu Sheng. Yang Kai listened to the conversations of these people and learned a lot. Xiao Fu Sheng was one of the top 10 elders of Medicine King's Valley. His alchemy skills were even better than the Valley Master of Medicine King's Valley, and he was one of the few mysterious grade top-rank alchemists in the world. Above mysterious grade was spirit grade, a height no one had ever reached before. Xiao Fu Sheng had been obsessed with alchemy all his life. Although he occupied one of Medicine King's Valley's peaks, he had never accepted a disciple, nor did he have a wife or children. He had dedicated his life to alchemy. In the world of alchemy, Xiao Fu Sheng had unparalleled prestige. A few months ago, news spread from Medicine King's Valley that Xiao Fu Sheng wanted to accept a disciple, shocking the world. Countless alchemists scrambled to worship Grandmaster Xiao and inherit his legacy. The central capital's 8 great families and first-class great forces even wanted to send their own alchemists to Hidden Cloud Peak, but they were all rejected by Grandmaster Xiao. Until today, in Medicine King's Valley town, there was a test set by Grandmaster Xiao. Only those who passed this test could enter Hidden Cloud Peak. Grandmaster Xiao didn't care about the requirements for accepting a disciple. No matter where they came from or what kind of force they belonged to, as long as they had the aptitude, they could learn his alchemy skills. The only requirement was that they had to be at least 25 years old. Therefore, those gathered here were all alchemists of the younger generation. Some of them, in order to enter Hidden Cloud Peak, had even given up participating in the Alchemy Summit. Time passed slowly. Yang Kai stood behind Dong Qingyan, paying attention to the surrounding movements while secretly observing the situation. The sun was high in the sky. With a burst of commotion, the disciples of Medicine King's Valley finally appeared. These disciples of Medicine King's Valley were not Grandmaster Zhao's disciples, but rather alchemists from other peaks who had been entrusted to handle and monitor today's test. Not far ahead was a high platform that had been set up in advance. This high platform was several dozen meters in length and width, and all the alchemists who had come to participate in the test were gathered around it. For Medicine King's Valley disciples leapt onto the high platform. The one leading them was a middle-aged man. Embroidered on his chest was a 3-petal golden flower, and his expression was cold and dignified. Holding a huge medicine pot in his hand, he walked forward with a majestic gait. A burst of exclamations rang out. It's Medicine King's Valley's Qinzai, only 35 years old. He's already reached the level of a heaven-grade top-rank alchemist. He's also a genius of Medicine King's Valley. I heard he's the next Valley Master. Shoo, quiet. Qinzai came to the high platform and placed the huge medicine pot in his hand on a table. The 3 Medicine King's Valley disciples behind him also stopped. Sweeping his eyes over the crowd, Qinzai cupped his fists and said, "Everyone, my martial uncle Xiao has set up a test here today to accept disciples. This Qin is not talented enough. I will be the supervisor." The special and important status of an alchemist made this group of Medicine King's Valley masters look down on them. Moreover, they were often accompanied by alchemy furnaces all year round, so many of them did not understand the ways of the world and were disinclined to exchange pleasantries with others. As a genius alchemist, Qinzai's arrogance and indifference were even more obvious. After a few simple words, Qinzai opened the huge medicine pot with a straight face. Suddenly, a strange medicinal fragrance filled the air, and when everyone smelled it, their spirits shook. The test is very simple. Here are some pills that my martial uncle Xiao has personally refined for today. He wishes to join Hidden Cloud Peak. He took out a medicinal pill and swallowed it to refine its medicinal effects. If there is nothing else, you may pass the test. Everyone, please help yourselves. Saying so, Xianxia stepped aside. The three young Medicine King's Valley disciples stepped forward and looked down at the crowd, their expressions cold and indifferent. Hundreds of people stood around the platform in a daze, none of them daring to be the one to eat the crabs. Xianxia's words were understated, but everyone knew that Grandmaster Zhao's test was definitely something special. Everyone was now waiting for someone else to try, so who would take the initiative to step forward? The Medicine King's Valley disciples were not in a hurry, they just stood on the high platform and waited quietly. After a long time, someone asked, "Dare I ask, what kind of pill is this?" One of the Medicine King's Valley disciples sneered, "A poison pill." The crowd was in an uproar. Although everyone knew that Grandmaster Zhao's test was not easy to pass, this kind of test was still far beyond everyone's expectations. Forcing someone to take a poison pill as soon as they came up, who could withstand it? Everyone only had one life. If they failed to pass the test and died here, wouldn't that be too bad? Xianxia lightly said, "Although it is a poison pill, it is not fatal. However, if one's aptitude is not high enough to take it, they will at least be weakened for 3 to 5 months." Hearing that it was not fatal, many people's minds became lively again. Grandmaster Xiao was still a famous grandmaster, so naturally he would not harm anyone. With this large pot of poison pills here, it was likely that those who wanted to fish in troubled waters would retreat. But of those who came here, which one of them was not confident in themselves? After thinking for a while, someone jumped onto the high platform. "I'll try." With someone taking the lead, many people followed suit. Shwa 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 shwa, more than a dozen people rushed up. "Please." The Medicine King's Valley disciple gestured. These people stepped forward, took a pill from the pot, and put it in their mouths. "Please refine the pills." The more than a dozen people who took the pills quickly sat down cross-legged and began circulating their secret arts. The hundreds of people below all stared with wide eyes, carefully observing, not wanting to miss a single thing. Chapter 271. In just 10 breaths of time, one of the alchemists who had taken a poison pill went pale, and without warning, his entire body began to tremble as cold sweat dripped from his forehead. Everyone in the audience exclaimed, never having expected the poison pills refined by Grandmaster Xiao to be so potent. Before the exclamations had even ended, 3 loud puffing noises rang out from the stage, followed by a strange stench that drifted over with the wind. It turned out that the alchemist had let out several loud farts while he was distracted. Many people who were nearby were caught off guard and inhaled the stench, nearly vomiting it on the spot, all of them showing looks of disgust. The pale face of the alchemist who had participated in the test instantly turned red. This was not due to the effects of the poison pill but due to shame. Under the watchful eyes of so many people, he had let out 3 farts. How could he endure this? Seeing countless eyes filled with pity and disgust directed towards him, the alchemist suddenly felt ashamed and hurriedly stood up, jumped off the stage, and fled in panic like a stray dog. He actually dared to participate in Grandmaster Zhao's test without any ability. He really overestimated himself. What a disgrace! Which alchemist is this? If word of this gets out, how will he face others in the future? The ridicule coming from behind was like a stab to his back, making him not dare to stay, and in the blink of an eye, he disappeared into the crowd. The crowd had not yet recovered from the ugliness of the alchemist when suddenly there was a soft thump from the high stage. Looking over, they saw the 2 alchemists who had just taken a poison pill actually fall backwards, their eyes wide open as they maintained a meditative posture, completely unconscious. The 3 young disciples from Medicine King's Valley glanced at each other and coldly snorted before walking over to the 2 alchemists and kicking them off the stage. Their attitudes were cold and their expressions were arrogant, as if they were just kicking 2 objects instead of people. However, no one dared to accuse them of anything. They had already been warned beforehand. Grandmaster Xiao had refined a bottle of poison pills. Since they dared to take it, they should be mentally prepared to be poisoned. Not dead. Immediately, Someone went up to test the aura of the two alchemists and found that they were not dead, but for some reason they were still motionless and wouldn't wake up. So hot. Another alchemist suddenly jumped up from the high platform. His exposed skin was as red as blood, emitting a monstrous heat. Steam was rising from the top of his head. He kept tearing at his clothes, and in a short while his upper body was bare, but he seemed to be unaware. It was still tearing. Dong Qingyan's pretty face blushed as she hurriedly covered her eyes. A few cultivators scurried up from below the high platform and dragged that person away with ashen faces. These few cultivators should be from the same clan as that alchemist. They didn't want to see him embarrass himself anymore. In less than 30 breaths of time, the first batch of alchemists who had participated in the pill trial had been completely annihilated. There were all kinds of living things, and the symptoms of poisoning were also all kinds of strange. Such a tragic experience not only did not deter these alchemists from joining Hidden Cloud Peak, but instead made them even more enthusiastic. The poison pills that Xiao Fusheng had refined were clearly the same kind of pills, but they could produce so many different effects. It was indeed the work of a master. Because of this, these alchemists who had come felt that Grandmaster Zhao's alchemy skills were unfathomable. After this group of alchemists left, another 30 alchemists stepped onto the stage. As time passed, more and more people were poisoned, either falling unconscious or making a fool of themselves. In total, more than 200 alchemists had stepped onto the stage, but not a single one had safely passed Grandmaster Zhao's test. The entire test site was filled with a gloomy atmosphere. Another group of alchemists was poisoned, and one of them, who had become as stiff as a stone after being poisoned, shouted loudly, "I don't accept this, I don't accept this. How can a single poison pill test my extraordinary aptitude? I don't accept this. I want to go to Hidden Cloud Peak to see Grandmaster Xiao. Grandmaster Xiao, please give this junior a chance." "Drag him away," Qin Zhe coldly shouted. The three young Medicine King's Valley disciples all wore cold expressions. Walking up to this man, they directly threw him off the high platform. The man continued to shout, "Grandmaster Xiao, I can inherit your mantle. Please give this junior a chance." "This group of people is crazy," Yang Kai coldly observed, shaking his head. Dong Qingyan softly said, "You don't know Grandmaster Zhao's prestige in the alchemy world, that's why you say that. Look at that man, even though he's so ugly and unsightly, has anyone ever laughed at him?" Yang Kai turned his head and found that no one was ridiculing him. Most of them had dull expressions, many of them even showing sympathy. Grandmaster, in the eyes of us alchemists, is a supreme existence. In order to worship him as our master, what does it matter if we suffer a bit of hardship and lose face? Dong Qingyan lightly bit her red lips, her face filled with both nervousness and expectation. "Are you sure you want to go up and take that poison pill?" Yang Kai grinned meaningfully. "You also saw the reaction of those people. Directly falling unconscious is already good, but if you can't pass this test, you'll have to tear off your clothes on the spot." Dong Qingyan's pretty face immediately paled. "And everyone gathered here is young. I'm sure they would be willing to see such a scene. TSKSK, the Dong family's young ladies' clothes are in disarray. That's a good topic to talk about after dinner." "Really? Even if you don't, if you let out a few loud farts in front of everyone, don't say that." Dong Qingyan's face went pale. No matter what kind of ugliness it was not something a little girl like her could accept. Once it happened, she would never be able to raise her head again in the future. Glaring fiercely at Yang Kai, Dong Qingyan waved her small fists. "I knew you were up to no good and wanted me to go back to my brother's place, but I still want to try this test. I've been preparing for this day for a long time. Now that I've come all the way here, how could I give up now?" Saying so, her voice softened again as she blushed. "If it's really like you said, you'll have to take me away sooner rather than later." Yang Kai shook his head slightly. It seemed that his cousin was determined to go up on stage. No matter how he tried to dissuade her, it would be useless. The crowd once again burst into an uproar. An Earth-grade top-rank alchemist. "Isn't that the Wang family's alchemy genius, Wang Qiren? He's also here? If it's him, I'm afraid he really can pass Grandmaster Zhao's test." Good, this is going to be interesting. Look at that one, an Earth-grade mid-rank alchemist, trained by the Xiong family. That one is also an Earth-grade mid-rank alchemist, from the Chang family. The alchemists of the great families are finally going to take action. A good show is about to begin. This group of alchemists were all young alchemists who had been trained by the great families and great forces, all of whom had come here to inherit Xiao Fu Sheng's mantle. Those who had just gone up. All of them were alchemists from small places, so it was normal for none of them to pass the test. Now that this group of people had gone up on stage, many people were looking forward to it. The crowd was abuzz with discussion, and as the voices reached the ears of the dozen or so Earth-grade high-rank alchemists on the stage, these young men all showed proud expressions. They also showed their good upbringing and stepped onto the high platform. First, they bowed to Qin Zhe. After performing a disciple's salute, they stepped forward one by one and stood in front of the pill pot. Brother Wang, please go first. Among all of you, only Brother Wang has reached the Earth-grade top-rank alchemist level, so naturally he should go first. The Chang family alchemists smiled and gestured. The others also nodded. Wang Qiren smiled and cupped his fists. Since that is the case, this Wang will accept. Saying so, he turned to the direction of Hidden Cloud Peak and bowed before reaching out and taking out a poison pill, placing it in his mouth before sitting down and refining it. From his attitude, it was clear that he was determined to pass this test and had a card up his sleeve. Otherwise, he wouldn't have bowed to Hidden Cloud Peak. That was the mountain peak where Xiao Fu Sheng lived. The three Medicine King's Valley disciples couldn't help sneering when they saw this. So what if it was an Earth-grade top-rank pill? The poison pill refined by Martial Granduncle Xiao. Even if a heaven-grade alchemist took it, if their aptitude wasn't high enough, they would still suffer. This Wang Qiren really thinks he's some big shot. The three Medicine King's Valley disciples glanced at each other and secretly sneered, waiting for the situation to develop, ready to see Wang Qiren make a fool of himself. Not long after, this group of people took the poison pill and found a good place to sit down. While everyone on the stage was absorbing the medicinal efficacies, the spectators below also held their breaths, craning their necks to watch, as if they were more nervous than if they were participating in the test themselves. These alchemists were truly worthy of being from great forces. All of them had extraordinary attainments and high aptitude. Those who had gone up to take the test before had lasted at most half a cup of tea's worth of time. However, this group of people only reacted after a cup of tea's worth of time had passed. The first to do so was an Earth-grade low-rank alchemist, who suddenly frothed at the mouth and fell unconscious. Immediately after, someone jumped off the high platform and a few muffled sounds rang out. One after another, the alchemists of these large forces all had problems. This result left everyone dumbfounded. It wasn't that these people were unworthy of their reputation, but that the difficulty of Grandmaster Zhao's test had exceeded everyone's imagination. After a stick of incense worth of time, only Wang Qiren remained on the high platform. Everyone else had left. Countless people's hearts were tense. If Wang Qiren couldn't pass this test, then they really didn't know who else could. After a long time, Wang Qiren's body suddenly moved and a faint black qi appeared on his forehead. Qin Zhe, who had been sitting there motionless since the beginning of the test, suddenly narrowed his eyes and stared intently at Wang Qiren's reaction. As time passed, the black qi became more and more obvious, more and more solid. Suddenly, the black qi disappeared without a trace, but instead, Wang Qiren opened his mouth and vomited a mouthful of black blood. The crowd burst into an uproar. This was the first time they had seen Wang Qiren react like this, so they couldn't help wondering if he had passed the test. The Wang family cultivator quickly rushed up and hurried to Wang Qiren's side. Wang Qiren waved his hand and stood up with difficulty, looking towards Qin Zhe with a trace of expectation. Qin Zhe sighed, "Fail." Wang Qiren's expression darkened, but he didn't give up, cupping his fists and asking, "Dare I ask, Senior, how can I pass this test?" Qin Zhe saw that he was also a talented alchemist, so he patiently explained, "In fact, you were just one step away from passing. Unfortunately, you failed." "Junior understands." Wang Qiren smiled bitterly and jumped off the high platform with the other cultivator. Chapter 272. Once again, they were all annihilated. Even an alchemy genius like Wang Qiren had failed to pass Grandmaster Zhao's test. This result was far beyond everyone's expectations. After Wang Qiren left, the scene was silent for a long time, no one daring to step onto the stage. No one was confident they could pass Grandmaster Zhao's test, so no one dared to step onto the stage and disgrace themselves. From beginning to end, the people from Medicine King's Valley were not anxious, so no one stepped onto the stage, they simply stood there and waited. Yang Kai glanced over at Dong Qingyan and found that her two small hands were constantly clenching and opening, clearly showing her extreme nervousness. Her face showed some eagerness to try, but also some lack of confidence. Even an Earth-grade high-rank alchemist had failed. Could she, a mere common-grade mid-rank alchemist, succeed? If you miss something, you may regret it for the rest of your life. Yang Kai said lightly. Dong Qingyan's tender body shook as she turned to look at Yang Kai, a trace of contemplation flashing across her eyes, but soon they became firm as she took a deep breath and said, let's go. Yang Kai smiled lightly, and together with Dong Qingyan, both stepped onto the high platform. Seeing that there was still someone who dared to step onto the stage, the crowd below suddenly burst into cheers and shouts of encouragement, causing Dong Qingyan to smile shyly. But soon after, someone discovered her rank through the embroidery on her chest. Only a common-grade mid-rank alchemist? With such a low rank, she's probably going to make a fool of herself. Poor little girl, if she makes a fool of herself here, how will she have the face to show her face in the future? Dong Qingyan listened to these words, biting her lip and not saying a word. The three young disciples from Medicine King's Valley actually smiled at her. A beautiful woman was always able to win good impressions wherever she went. Young lady, please. Dong Qingyan nodded gently, took a deep breath, walked over to the medicine pot, and took out a poison pill, turning back to look at Yang Kai questioningly. Yang Kai nodded lightly and said, "Don't worry, I'll watch from the sidelines." If Dong Qingyan really couldn't pass the test, he would definitely take her away. He definitely had to take her away. He couldn't let her embarrass herself in front of so many people. On the high platform, besides the Medicine King's Valley disciples, only Dong Qingyan and Yang Kai were present. On top of that, Yang Kai's outfit made it obvious he was this woman's attendant, so the Medicine King's Valley disciples didn't immediately chase them away. Dong Qingyan took a deep breath, placed the poison pill into her mouth, and swallowed it down before walking over to the side and sitting down cross-legged. He circulated his energy to neutralize the effects of the medicine. Yang Kai put his hands behind his back. Like a javelin, he stood in place, vigilantly observing Dong Qingyan's movements. Half a cup of tea's time passed, but she did not respond at all. 10 minutes passed. She still did not respond. Yang Kai couldn't help narrowing his eyes as he secretly released his divine sense to sweep Dong Qingyan's body, quickly discovering that the yuan qi in her body was rapidly circulating. He was burning some of the impurities in his meridians. These miscellaneous items should be the poison contained in the poison pill. Oh, this little girl isn't bad, she managed to hold on for so long. Someone in the audience exclaimed. Of the several hundred people who had come up before, except for the alchemists from the great families, few had been able to hold on for so long. Moreover, it wasn't as if no common-grade alchemist had come up before, but those people had only lasted a dozen breaths, so Dong Qingyan's performance had impressed everyone. How did she do it? She's another genius suited for alchemy. Compared to that Wang Qiren, she's not much better. I know her, she's the Dong family's young lady, Dong Qingyan. What? The Dong family's young lady? As the crowd exclaimed, a faint black qi suddenly appeared between Dong Qingyan's eyebrows. Quickly, this black qi became thicker and thicker, and then, the black qi quickly moved and disappeared into her body, but Dong Qingyan suddenly opened her mouth and spat out a black qi visible to the naked eye. After exhaling this black qi, Dong Qingyan opened her big eyes in amazement. Qin Zhe also stood up from his chair. his stiff face finally bloomed into a smile as he praised, "Good, good. Someone finally passed Martial Uncle Zhao's test." Passed? The hundreds of people present were silent, almost unable to believe their eyes. In total, more than 300 alchemists from all over the world had taken the stage. Many of them were geniuses with outstanding aptitude, some were even Earth-grade high-rank alchemists, but all of them had somehow failed. Now, a single common-grade mid-rank alchemist had actually passed unscathed? What kind of mysteries were hidden in this? Dong Qingyan was also dumbfounded, blinking her big eyes as she stared at Qin Zhe in amazement. Yang Kai lightly coughed and said, "Young lady, this senior said you have passed the Grandmaster's test." What? Dong Qingyan didn't seem to have recovered. Qin Zhe's cold expression suddenly changed, replaced by a kind smile. "Young lady, congratulations on passing the test. From now on, you are my Martial Uncle Zhao's disciple." This Qin should also call you junior sister." Dong Qingyan was stunned for a long time. Suddenly, she jumped up and burst into tears of joy, covering her face with both hands, her eyes immediately becoming red. Happiness had come too suddenly. The little girl was obviously not mentally prepared. She was at a loss for words for a long time, not knowing what to say. Tears began streaming down her cheeks. After a long time, Dong Qingyan turned to Qin Zhe and said, "Yan, greets big brother Qin." Qin Zhe laughed. "Junior sister is too polite. Martial Uncle Zhao accepting you as a disciple is my Medicine King's Valley's blessing." After the two exchanged pleasantries, the atmosphere immediately became much more harmonious, causing the group of people below to stare dumbfounded. When had they ever seen Medicine King's Valley's Qin Zhe act so friendly? Every time they asked him to perform alchemy, he would always put on a straight face, as if everyone in the world owed him money. But now, he was smiling so widely that his molars could be seen. It wasn't that he didn't know how to smile, but rather that they couldn't enter his discerning eyes. "Since junior sister has passed Martial Uncle Zhao's test, you are now a disciple of my Medicine King's Valley. If there is nothing else, you can come with us to Medicine King's Valley. If there is something you need, please handle it as soon as possible." Qin Zhe said with a smile. Dong Qingyan nodded. If she wanted to enter Medicine King's Valley, she would need to inform the Dong family first. However, since things had reached this point, she believed that her big brother would definitely not stop her. Being able to enter Medicine King's Valley was also a matter of pride for the Dong family. Think about it, no matter which great force in the world wanted to have a good relationship with Medicine King's Valley, the Dong family's young lady was already the direct disciple of Medicine King's Valley's Grandmaster Xiao. This was a unique advantage. No one could compare to him. Big brother, Yan also wants to try. Dong Qingyan glanced over at Yang Kai and said, "Guard." Qin Zhe frowned, glancing over at Yang Kai faintly. Although he didn't show much disgust, the disdain in his eyes was obvious. "Yan has been protecting me since I was a child, so..." Qin Zhe gave her a meaningful look, apparently misunderstanding that she had developed feelings for him over time. Not wanting to delve deeper, he just nodded and said, "Since he wants to try, it's fine. In any case, Martial Uncle Zhao has refined a large number of poison pills." Saying so, he casually asked, "What grade of alchemist is he?" Dong Qingyan blushed and said, "He doesn't know alchemy." Qin Zhe's expression suddenly became ugly. "If you don't know alchemy, then what's the point of trying? Do you really think alchemy is a child's play? My Medicine King's Valley is not so easy to enter if you don't have a heart for alchemy. If you want to pass this test, then don't try." Yang Kai looked at him faintly and said, "Dare I ask, when Senior Xiao set up this test, did he say that those without alchemy experience would not be able to participate?" Qin Zhe sneered, "Martial Uncle never said such a thing. But since you have never studied alchemy before, you naturally won't be able to go far on this road in the future. If you don't intend to devote your life to alchemy, then don't come here to make trouble. This is not a place for you to play around." Yang Kai's expression changed slightly as he said lightly, "As far as this junior knows, Grandmaster Xiao himself was only 26 or 27 years old when he first started learning alchemy. This junior is only 17 this year, 10 years younger than Grandmaster Xiao. All of this information was what he had just heard from others. Qin Zhe's brow furrowed as his expression became quite unpleasant. Suddenly, someone from the crowd cursed, "Who do you think you are? How dare you compare yourself to Grandmaster Xiao?" Grandmaster Xiao is a genius, born for alchemy. Not to mention that he only started learning alchemy at the age of 26 or 27, even if he was 40 or 50 years old, it wouldn't be too late. What qualifications do you have to compare yourself to Grandmaster Xiao? Silence! Qin Zhe angrily shouted, immediately silencing the crowd. Qin Zhe stared deeply at Yang Kai, not saying a word. After a long time, he nodded and said, "What you said makes sense. Since Martial Uncle did not say that only alchemists must participate in this test, you are qualified. Go and take a poison pill." Yang Kai nodded, and under the sneers of the three Medicine King's Valley disciples, he took out a poison pill and threw it directly into his mouth. Dong Qingyan looked at him nervously, but Yang Kai just smiled and walked over to the side and sat down. Circulating his true Yang secret art, a burning sensation spread out, causing Qin Zhe's brow to wrinkle slightly, and he couldn't help secretly nodding. Although he had looked down on Yang Kai a moment ago, now that he felt his yuan qi, he knew that this boy was not simple. At such a young age, he had already reached the yuan qi boundary. This kind of aptitude was not something an average person could compare with. If he did not distract himself with alchemy and instead concentrated on the martial Dao, he would surely achieve great things in the future. A trivial guard is so powerful? The Dong family's heritage was not shallow. Qin Zhe was really surprised. As soon as the poison pill entered his stomach, Yang Kai felt it completely dissolve and flow directly into his meridians. Worthy of being personally refined by a grandmaster, this kind of medicinal efficacies were simply too fast. Not to mention that Yang Kai was now at the second stage of yuan qi. Even if a cultivator had just reached the initial element boundary, as long as they circulated their yuan qi, they would be able to effortlessly absorb the medicinal efficacies. The medicinal efficacies flowed through his meridians, but after being tempered and burned by his true yang yuan qi, they were not able to harm him in the slightest. After a few circulations, Yang Kai felt that the poison had completely lost its effect, and instead continued to flow up to the top of his head, converging into a turbid gas in his mouth. Gawking for a moment, Yang Kai secretly cursed. Dong Qingyan had just spent the time it took to drink a cup of tea to pass the test, which had already caused Qin Zhe to lose his composure. Now, after just a few circulations he had passed the test, who knew what kind of disturbance would arise? This speed is too fast. Thinking so, Yang Kai swallowed the turbid gas in his mouth, not spitting it out, while continuing to circulate his secret art as if nothing had happened. Welcome to Immortal Cultivation Audiobooks, your gateway to the mystical world of Xianxia. Dive into legendary tales of martial arts, spiritual growth, and immortal ascension. Here, we bring you full-length English audiobooks of the best Wuxia and Xianxia stories, from young prodigies to ancient sect wars. Perfect for fans of Against the Gods, Martial World, and tales of demons and gods.